Good evening, everybody. It is a May Day of sorts. Nothing crazy happening. My hair is a mess. This is what happens when Laurel leaves and lets me to start a live chat by myself. But hey, I got it going without any help. So I'll take my wins where I can get them. Uh, but it is rainy, stormy weather here, and we've got a little bit of time to talk some bees and take your questions. I hope you all are having a good season. One thing you'll learn in beekeeping is every year is different from the other. All right, so it sounds like we've got someone from Australia on. Hey, Bonnie from Kentucky. Yeah, we've got that thunderstorm moving all through Tennessee and Kentucky. That's for sure. Three boys, bees, Stephen Walker. Nice shirt. Yeah, it's like a beekeeping's version of a prison shirt. Let me grab a hat. All right. That's a little bit better. It's time for a haircut. I've been busy. I haven't had much time for haircuts or anything like that. Storms in Ohio. It's going through. We actually needed some rain though. We hadn't had a good rainfall in a couple weeks. Things were getting a little dry, and I was concerned for the later flow not having enough moisture in the ground. So I'm glad that we got the rainfall that we did. Hopefully, it won't beat up the tulip poplars too bad. The blackberry blossom is about half bloomed out, and I'm hoping for some good weather the next few days for that blackberry blossom nectar to really just rain the nectar in the hives. We've been busy keeping up with supering and swarming, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, almost a Charlie Brown shirt. I know, right? That's what my son says. We love Charlie Brown here. What temperature is too cold to make splits? Good question. So I've made splits as cold as 39 degrees Fahrenheit. You have to be quick. You have to be careful not to let the queens get cold, because if the queens get too cold, it'll damage the sperm viability in their spermatheca, which is the organ that they have that holds the sperm they receive from the drones and keeps that for the rest of their life. So we have to make sure they don't get too cold or too hot. And you need to make sure if you make a split that you have, the colder it is, the more bees you need to cover that brood, and they need to have food contact. So if that's a frame of honey or two, or if that's some fondant, which is a great feed, or contact with a sugar brick, bees can withstand some pretty cold temperatures if they have a good cluster and they have food contact. So you can get pretty cold. Do I like making splits in 39 degrees Fahrenheit? Absolutely not. And the bees didn't like it either. But they were very hesitant to fly at me and sting me, I will say. I was very hesitant to get outside. Um, all right. Brian Reese, good evening. Thanks, man. I appreciate it very much. Hope things are going good for you in New Jersey, and we appreciate your continued support. And ask your questions away, Brian, if you have any. Like the bee shirt. I want to say real quick, when you have a beekeeping YouTube channel, you keep a few hundred hives of bees, and you love bees as much as I do, you expect to get some bee stuff. But for those of you who may be close friends of mine or family members, just because I like bees doesn't mean that's the only thing that I like. And for Christmas, it kind of gets a little old getting yellow and black and everything. It's just not my color. It doesn't match my eyes. It's all good, but literally, like for Christmas, it's like bee stuff, bee stuff. Oh, look. Oh, bee stuff. It's all good. Let's see. Rain for 4 days. Northwest Indiana. Some bees getting out between the rain. Greetings from the Caribbean. All right. Yep. Yep. You do need some coffee. This is some good stuff. And I've got my Dirt Rooster mug right here that I got from Randy at our first conference. And the mugs are made here in the United States, like ours are. And I love that. Good pottery mug. Snow is almost gone in Montana. Gosh, it is going to be like 90 degrees Wednesday here, and we're going to be swimming. I promised the kids. So we're going to work bees early in the day and then take a half day off, and I promised the kids to take them to swim. Ah, tornado went through. I hope nobody was hurting that. All right, get to some questions. How much flow you think Tennessee has left? It's really difficult to say. A lot of things impact flows and it can happen very rapidly. Not enough moisture in the ground can cause flows to dry up quicker. Temperatures being too hot can damage some nectars from being able to produce, and temperatures being too cool can actually retard some nectars from being produced. It really depends a lot on the plant, the weather. There's so many things, but if I'm a guessing man, how long? We're a little behind this year. Typically, our flow cuts off somewhere around in my part of Tennessee the second week of June, as early as the first day or so of June, if it's an early year. I'm going to guess we're going to have a little bit of flow even going to the third or fourth week of June this year. That might not be the case. So we got some flow left, and a lot of flow can happen just in the next 3 weeks here in Tennessee. A massive amount of honey can go on. Now, my buddy down in Columbia has scales on several of his hives. The bees put on 10 pounds in just one day. So if they can get 4 days like that in a row during a prime flow, that's 40 pounds. So that's pretty impressive. I think we're in good shape though, as long as we don't get too much rain or too much of this or too much of that, and we keep our bees from swarming. I think we'll have a good flow this year. Will it be exceptional? I don't know, but I think it's already been good so far. Charlie Brown, ask me again, I'll knock you down. Bee stuff is all I ask for Christmas. I do like bee stuff for Christmas, and I gotta admit, I've got a few things on my Christmas list this year that are beekeeping related, but it doesn't mean all my clothes have to be bee stuff. I look like a 12-year-old going into school photos. All right, this is the last time I wear this shirt on a live chat. Hmm. Kamon, I planted an acre of white clover last year. It's really tall now and is barely flowering. Someone suggests I cut it down some to make it bloom out. Thoughts? Well, is it just a late bloomer? No pun intended. I don't know. I mean, white clover is just starting to really do well here. And I don't know, is this white clover as far as like the typical Dutch white clover or Ladina? Or are we talking like a white sweet clover here? It might just need a little bit more time. And if it has bloomed out a good bit, some people do cut it down and let it come back. When you have multiple hives in the same yard, is there a way to tell how much nutritional value is in the area to determine the maximum number of hives a yard should have? A lot of hard questions today. I think we're going to cut it short. No, I'm kidding. That's a hard question, but a good question. It is a little bit difficult to determine that quickly. This is something that can take a few years. And if you have someone in the area that is really knowledgeable about the area and has some experience that's helpful, keep records. In my area of Tennessee, I think 30 hives is a good number. 10 hives would be better. And so, not overcrowding. It depends on the time of the year. During strong periods of nectar flow and pollen flows, I've had 80 colonies to the yard and they're all just building up great. But when it comes to partial dearths or less ideal times of flow, then you can really see that impact. So it really just comes with experience and the location. In some yards, you can keep so many bees, and there are some places like, well, Etienne up in the Yukon, they have mostly a very, very small amount of diverse forage compared to what we have here in Tennessee, and they can't keep very many hives. I think he said they try to keep about 4 or 5 to a yard, very sparse up there, and a lot of pines or trees like that. Finally got to see a live video from you guys. Keep missing them. I watched all the Hive Life videos. Love them. Thanks. Hey, Steve Chubb. Thanks for being a part of our conference and the live chats. And for those of you who don't know, we do have videos for the conference available on Vimeo. And you can see everything from Bob Benny to well, everybody who spoke there, and even more than that. If people came to the Hive Life conference and wore a shirt like this, that would be hilarious. I'd feel bad though because I want to be wearing one. White Dutch, okay, it's about 12 to 14 inches tall. I would give it just a little bit more time, Cobra Strike. If it's a good plot, it'll get 12 to 14 inches tall. Sometimes it just needs a little bit more heat to get going, but if you don't see it within the next week or two, yeah, I'd mow it down. But I mean, white clover is just starting here. Dan Schneider, hey there, Cameron. We got a great, beautiful sunny day. Spring is finally. Oh, okay. I thought we were getting a question here. All right, hang on one second, would you? All right, how to get something for my coffee. Now, yeah, can I introduce a Carney Queen into my Italian hives? Yes, I've done it before and it works just fine. Just don't quick release. There's no reason to with any type of queen. And if you have a flow going on, it should be good. If I don't have a flow going on, if we're in a dearth period, we will feed them a little bit. That the colonies accept queens much better. And wow, Steve Chubb, thank you. Wow, that is huge. We really appreciate you, Steve, and you're welcome. But I told you, as a thank you, and uh, you're too generous. Thank you very much. Shoot me some questions. Chris thought I was going to switch my shirt. Maybe I should. Hello from Pennsylvania. I have a hive, added two shallow supers on top. Been 2 weeks, no action up top. Flow has started. Well, a lot depends on the condition of the bees, too. How strong is the colony? And maybe the flow has started to a degree, but just because your buddy a handful of miles down the road's experiencing a flow, that might not mean that it's quite where you're at yet. I have bee yards that are 8 miles apart that literally start 7 to 10 days different. Um, and one of the yards experiences a flow that I don't get up here at my house, down in along the river and creek areas. See, I'm up on a hill where my house is, and so we don't have any. We're pretty high up on this hill, and so we don't have the fertility is not as good, but we don't have autumn olives. We don't have near as much privet up here on the hill, and so we don't get strong. We don't get the early autumn olive flows like those other bee yards do, and we definitely don't get a strong privet either. So those other bee yards down in those areas will produce about 25 to 30% more than we do here at the house. That's huge over a yard of 40 hives. So for you, maybe your bees are a little bit behind strength wise, or maybe they're not, and your flow is just a little bit more delayed than people you're talking to. This year is a little bit behind, but I would have to see your bees. But if the flow's coming in and they've got the bees, they'll be up in those supers working. That is for sure. Daniel Weston says, "Swarm call, gotta go." It's that time of the year. Good deal. Hey, Cayman, I ordered 10 queens for not this weekend, but next. I got into my hives last weekend and had some drones, so I did a walk away split. Is if there is just the odd drone, will they find the virgin? So, okay, this is an interesting question. Let's bring up DCAs, drone congregation areas. So, we don't fully understand why drones congregate in certain locations. We know that they do, but it's not random. I mean, these DCAs are the same from year to year. And they're trying to, scientists have tried to figure it out. Why do drones congregate in these areas? Well, queens fly a long distance and they fly through these areas, and drones have those giant eyes on their heads to find them. I would say that you're probably good. If you were raising dozens of queens, you'd be in trouble. Maybe if you're really pushing early in the season, but if you're just trying to get one queen reared, there's a good chance that she'll find some drones. A lot depends on the weather too, but these drone congregation areas, you can get like queen pheromone, or actually put a queen in a cage and get a balloon and just run it through areas, and put a camera up on that as well. Or nowadays they got the drones they'll take up there, and these drones, they're at a certain height and they just congregate there. It's really fascinating. I think this time of the year you're probably pretty good if you have drones in the purple light stage. Loaded with bees, very strong. Well, if it's loaded with bees and you got supers on them, just watch out for the swarm cells and watch out for the flow. It'll hit you, Terry, before you know it. It might just not have reached you yet. It happens fast. I found a hive in a tree on my property. When would be a good time to try and get it in a box? I'm in Eastern Kansas. Love your talks. All right, thanks, Daryl, for that comment. So back when I did a lot of these, I would wait till right before I felt like was swarm season. And you got to gauge the cavity too. Are they in a really small cavity or is it a big one? That'll determine when they swarm. So if I look at swarm season in my area being April as the beginning of it, we'll get some a little bit in late March too. And if it's warmer, even earlier. So you got to gauge that. And I want to get into those bees right at the beginning of swarm season, not like right before it starts. And that way the bees are strong and healthy. And I also know that I have a full honey flow season ahead of me. So it sounds like it's probably around that time for you. Get in there and get them out. And then you have all the natural pollens and nectars that are fixing to come in that'll really help those bees restabilize and build back up. It'd be very difficult to wait and do that during robbing season. It probably wouldn't work out very good for you. All right, this thing just jumped all over the place. All right, Kent said I also need some advice on the splits with the new queens. All right, so I love making all my splits for new queens, young bees. Young bees. Take 2 frames of brood, take a frame or two of food if you have it to offer, but you could just give them 1 frame of food, a frame of brood, and a couple shakes of bees. Or you could put 2 frames of brood, which will make them even stronger. And I believe a 2 frame brood split with adhering bees and a food frame, as long as they have enough nutrition to be able to go forward full throttle, will turn into what is it, 32,000 bees in 2 months, something like that. I can't remember the formulation, but I would make it with a frame or two of brood and then a frame of food for sure, and feed them anyways. And if you have comb, give them that. They'll grow real fast with the comb. Put the queen in between the frames of brood, but if you only want to use 1 frame of brood, just shake some more bees in there. It's all about bee coverage. You need for whatever they have. If it's a food frame or a brood frame, those have to be guarded. They have to be maintained. And you also want to have some extra bees so they can devote some to heating the cluster and also sending some bees out to forage. So err on the side of little extra bees and put it in a new location. That way, all the old forager bees go back to the original colony so they can work in that hive making honey or whatever. And you have nothing but young bees left with the queen. Young bees accept queens so much better, and give them a little bit of thin feed. And that'll also help them accept the queen. And I find that gives me really good results. Let them slowly chew through the candy. Don't come back for at least a week. It'd be better to wait 9 or 10 days, because once that queen starts laying good, it'll take a couple of days, a day or two for her to get out of the cage, a couple of days for her to start even beginning to lay again. And if you give her like 4 or 5 more days to lay and she's rocking that egg laying production and the pheromone production at that point, then you got a nice stable queen there. Don't rush it. Give them 10 days after introduction and give them that first little bit of feed, and then if they need more, give it to them. That works wonderfully for splits. Now if you want to make them stronger, heck, you could make a 3 frames of brood, 4 frames of brood, whatever. You could split the hive down the middle. Concept's still the same though. My new queens, I love giving them the young bees. Let the old hive has old bees keep the old bees, and they're already devoted to that queen anyways. Yeah, black locust was really good here in Tennessee. I hope you guys, it's just about on the way out completely, but hopefully you guys up in Kentucky and north are going to get a good black locust flow too. I expect to see some lighter honey this year due to that. All right, someone else from Pennsylvania. Lots of Pennsylvania beekeepers on tonight. Someone from Maine. How many frames of brood should I have to make a good split? So I might have just answered that with my last one, Sean, but I really like making a good split, at least 2 frames of brood. And give them a frame of food. If you can afford to, give them another frame of food, and then give them foundation, or combs would be better if you have extra combs. And then put the queen in between the frames of the brood, and that'll work out really good. Make sure you shake in a few extra bees, and the best frames to shake from are always frames that have larvae, that you can see the larvae down into them, because that's where the concentration of nurse bees are, or frames of bee bread. That's the 2 highest areas you're going to get young bees from, is those areas. Just make sure you don't shake your queen in, or that kind of defeats the purpose. All right. Steve Chubb, I see a microscope behind you. Is that Laurels? It is. And you can see how she's got the top off back there. She's working on mounting a camera onto it so you guys can see what we see. And actually, I was just talking to one of you all the other day, and Laurel's got to start working on a video. So she will be doing a video soon. And she is terrified. I hope she's not watching this right now. She shouldn't be. She's busy. But she's good at spying on me. She knows how to work all that technology stuff. However, yeah, she's got to do a video. She promised, that she's nervous. I can't wait. I've been waiting for this day for years, and I wasn't the one that did it to her. So thank you guys. She'll be fine. She's one of those people that gets really nervous, but then when the occasion arises, she always does so good. And yeah, I wonder sometimes if she could just be comfortable with public speaking. I mean, what use? I would be like a drone at that point with no job at that point. It's just chuck me out. Like, why do I need you? I can do all the talking and everything with the YouTube channel. Hopefully, she'll one of these days get a little bit more involved with the videos. She's brilliant. After a new queen is hatched in the hive, how long does it take for her to mature and go out on a mating flight? And how many days does she go out on those flights? So lots of variables there. So when a new queen emerges from the queen cell, she usually sticks around for 2 or 3 days. It can sometimes be a little bit longer, but if the weather's good, I mean, she could be out on a mating flight in just a couple days. And then the mating flight could just be 2 days. It could end up being over several days if the weather's poor. It could, if the weather's really bad, it could take her, a week. After a couple weeks, though, if she hasn't had an opportunity to go on a mating flight, she'll biologically, they just stop attempting for a mating flight, and they will be a drone layer and lay unfertilized eggs. But from start to finish, if things are ideal, the queen should be back laying from the time she emerges from the cell within 8 to 10 days, if the weather is, every condition is ideal. However, when I drop a cell in, a queen cell that we raise, we drop them in 2 days before they emerge. I don't come back for typically about 15, 16 days. And very light inspection, see what's going on in there. And so if you have some cells that you know are really ripe, give them a little bit of time. Maybe give them 21 days. But then if you know that if you don't have a queen in 21 days, you need to combine that colony with another one with a paper combine or something, because those bees are going to get old and you don't have a queen at that point. All right, Western New York. Thanks for coming on, Wanda Wells. Southwest Virginia, doing good, Bass Pro. Good to see you on here. Looking for a used honey sump heated. Anyone have a lead on one? Well, I just sold one. I don't think I know of anyone that has a sump, but if I happen to see one, I'll post it on my Facebook page. I know a guy who's selling a Maxent senior capping spinner. It's nice looking. It's you have to have a lot of wax to justify it, though. What's your favorite queen rearing system? I love the Doolittle system. GM Doolittle taught us that you could graft with either a device that you make yourself, itself, or a German grafting tool, or nowadays they have Chinese grafting tools, and you just place the larva from the cell into the cup that you make, and it works really good. You have to learn how to do the process correctly. I've got some videos on that in my playlist, but people usually don't mess up on the grafting as much as they mess up on the density of bees. You want, like, if you're doing a 5 frame nuke, 7 frames worth of young bees in a 5 frame nuke. We want swarm like conditions, because that, and we also need nutritionally spring like conditions to raise the best queens. Those are the things that people usually mess up on, or they'll have something in that queen rearing colony, some other larvae they dropped in with a frame of food they didn't know they had, and the bees will devote their energy towards those instead of your grafts. But if you learn how to graft properly, you can raise all kinds of prime queens, and it's very affordable. You get a German grafting tool, it's good for life. Chinese grafting tools are so cheap. Cups are, pennies compared to what, they're very cheap. The whole thing is very inexpensive. And I've tried some other methods. There's nothing wrong with those, but for me, I don't see why I'd ever switch from the Doolittle method of queen grafting. So do drones fly out every day, or do they just wait for a queen in the hive to leave? So Don, they actually don't fly as far away as the queens do. Queens fly further away, to de- deter some inbreeding. So the goal is for them actually not to mate with the drones from their own hive. Drones do fly out every sunny day. Once they get to a certain age, they fly, and they drink honey like my truck drinks gas. They are honey hogs, but they are important to the circle of beekeeping life. My kids are starting to ask interesting questions about drones and queens. It's getting quite interesting. We'll have to deal with that one of these days. How long into spring do you feed pollen patties? If it makes a difference, I don't have to worry about hive beetles yet. So you don't. That's great that you don't have to worry about hive beetles, John Jay. It really depends. This was one of the best build up springs I had as far as March goes. That's really our build up period before the April and May honey flow for us. In March, we just had great weather. We got a little bit of rain along to keep things going, but we had a lot of sunny, warm days. Bees brought in so much pollen. I fed less patties this spring than I have in the last several years. It was just an ideal build up spring. And so I did feed some, supplemented here and there. I watched the weather. And if we're going to get some bad weather, I'll throw some on to keep them going forward. But mainly, we want to just see what's coming into the colony. How are the bees building up? And if we have inclement weather, lots of cold weather coming in during the buildup, that's when we throw in the patties, or lots of rain, we throw in the patties, and just help smooth out the gaps with those pollen patties. So typically, my patty feeding is in February and in March. And anytime I feel like we're getting really bad weather, but well, I don't know where you're at, but I'm using it to just smooth out the gaps of the natural flows. It's a tool. Hmm. Anyone noticing less swarms this year? Very few wild swarms caught in my area this year. I am seeing less swarms this year, but I'm not too awful surprised. Last year was one of the worst fall flows in Kentucky, Tennessee, and the surrounding regions. The fall flow was almost non existent in some places. This makes it really hard on wild bees to be able to survive. And so consequently, you don't get as many swarms the following year. So uh, there are beekeepers still catching swarms, and I actually had one move into some dead out equipment this last week. So that was exciting. It was probably about a 4 or 5 framer, but no, I'm not seeing near as many this year. Last year, gosh, at this point, I think I'd already caught 4 in my equipment, just scattered around. And but it varies from year to year based upon nutrition and conditions. All right, Kingpin Rebel. Tomorrow I'm picking up my very first 20 frame extractor by Data. When unboxing, what are the most important things I need to check for to make sure everything works like it's supposed to? Well, they make those Data extractors pretty straightforward. So shouldn't be a whole lot to it. The main thing when it comes to, like, I had a date at 20 for several years, and you can actually see a video of mine on how I used it back when I used that system. It was a great extractor. Um, you want to grease them. They should come greased. If it's like the one that I have, the bottom will be a sealed ball bearing, and the top bearing underneath the lid, that actually will have a grease port, and you'll want to use some food grade grease for that. It should already be packed, but you never know. Um, some of these guys forget. As far as the rest of it, just hook it up, plug it in, turn it on, make sure it's just spinning around and it's not doing anything crazy. It may rock a little bit on the floor, but that could be the unevenness of your floor. But I think it's a good investment. That dating extractor that I purchased, it was bigger than what I needed at the time, but it was definitely a good investment. I ended up growing into it, and the resale value was very, very good because it was made so good. I mean, the thing was in great condition when I sold it, and I used it a lot harder than most people would. Um, Speaking of extractors, there's another guy making extractors. The wax video that I'm working on Sunday morning, I'll be releasing. Hopefully, I'll have it all edited. The new wax tank that is made in Wisconsin. He also makes extractors in the United States too, and the wax tank is the first of its kind, like it in the United States. And I'd like to say thanks to David Davenport and Ian for helping me to develop it with Thorn Manufacturing. It works awesome. It does exactly what I wanted it to. I don't know why we haven't had this option already in the bee industry, but we definitely do now. And it's made out of 18 gauge steel, and in some places thicker. It's really nice. And I can't wait to show you guys the video. It makes wax rendering fun. Why are the bees getting bigger compared to years ago? The ones I see now are fat, referring to the bumblebees of the River Dee, Aberdeen, Scotland. They seem to be a lot bigger than years ago. I have no idea about that, Chris. Outside of honeybees, I really don't know much about these other types of bees. Let's see here. Bee Lord, hey, our friend from Poland. Yes, pray for the citizens and people of Poland. Beekeepers. Actually, there's one that's a refugee here in Tennessee right now, and he was running a couple hundred hives in Ukraine and had to leave, and a lot of his hives were destroyed, and some of his neighbors were killed. It's very, very sad and very real over there, and our prayers are constantly with those people. And I just can't imagine having to leave my whole bee operation and just pack up and go. All that work, all the investment, and you just don't know if you'll ever be able to come back, or what if you do, what you're going to come back to. It's sad. Thanks for commenting, B Lord, and for being up so early there in Poland. I know you guys are on a major time difference as us. Steve Chubb, I have a hive that has drones early. The hive seemed very strong. Would you breed from them, or would you think breeding from them might be breeding for swarm inclined bees? Uh, if if they're wanting to swarm really early, then maybe so. But this is one thing I want to say. Like in some of the videos, like my last one on swarm control, and I'm being really aggressive. I'm eliminating all the swarm cells. I can raise my own queens. I also have breeder queens. Some of these have, between my work and some of the other works of the people that I have purchased genetics from, the work goes back decades. And but I wasn't always doing that. And you don't need to focus on that. I'm running a business. Where my goal is to produce 15,000 pounds of honey this year, and bees as well, and to requeen most of my colonies, and to make some extra splits to sell in summer as singles. So we have different goals. So if you feel like that's a good hive right there, and they're gentle and they're doing the things that you want, r- make a split off of them. If they're aggressively swarmy, then yeah, you're selecting for that. But if they're just big and they're strong and they're wanting to swarm because they're packed and they have grown so quickly, that's just kind of the way it works sometimes too. And you want to reproduce from the ones that do the best for you. So just keep in mind when you watch my videos, not talking just to you, to Steve, but everybody else, that just because I'm doing it or Bob's doing it or Ian, we've got a business to think of. And, when I was a hobby beekeeper in a small sideline, I did things very differently and it worked for me. Um, but it's a little bit different now. Langstroth hive or horizontal hive, which one is the best? Neither. No, they're both good hives. Which one's the best? If you're wanting to keep things simple and productive, Langstroth is the best, and you can get tools to help you. You can pull off a box at a time. Where horizontal hives, you have to pull one frame at a time. But my horizontal hives kicking butt. I mean, it's huge. They're healthy. They went into winter with almost under a 1% mite count, had a brand new queen, great nutrition. They've been blowing it up. I've pulled like a 5 frame nuke's worth of bees out of there so far, made a split off of them. They have just been killing it. I think if I can keep them from swarming, I'll get 100 pounds of honey off that horizontal hive. Does that mean it's better than my Langstroth? No, I'll get over 100 pounds off of several of my Langstroth this year too, I think. So they're both good hives. It really comes down to management, what kind of management you want to do. I like both of them. From a professional standpoint, there's a lot more advantages to the typical Langstroth. I've got a lifter that can pick up the boxes. My extraction equipment likes the 10 frame boxes better. It's easier to buy new equipment. So, advantages and disadvantages. The one thing I do stress though is there's a big trend right now of beekeepers, some of them beekeepers, some of them just promoting stuff, of going to all kinds of new style of hives because the hive is the problem. It's not your bees, it's the hive. Well, sometimes it's the beekeeper's fault, it's the varroa mite's fault. And I'm preaching right here, but your hive can only do so much. And I see these guys encouraging beekeepers get these frames that are like this deep and this wide. And you can't get an extractor hardly that'll work with that. And if you can, it's more expensive. It's hard to resell those things. If you buy a nuke, it won't fit in there quite right. Then there's just not a reason to do it. I had a guy blast me just yesterday because I made the suggestion that sticking with traditional Langstroth deeps in a horizontal was a good idea for the resale value and being able to source new material and extractors for it. And they said, I was nuts if I thought that a regular deep Langstroth was better than a frame that big. I don't know about you, but I don't want to pick up a frame of honey that's 20 inches tall and this wide. That's My back's already sore, and I'm 33. But to each his own, and you can do whatever you want. Bees will survive in a lot of things. I've seen bees survive here in Tennessee, um, and on pressure treated wood between the outside of a house, and the only thing that was on the outside that was blocking them was just a thin strip of plywood and a piece of Tyvek, and did great. Huge hive. I've seen bees overwinter in tires here, like tractor tires. Bees just need nutrition, low mites, and good conditions. Good queen. Yep, this last fall stank quite a bit. Man, Wayne's honeybee says he's caught 4 in swarm traps so far. Wayne's hogging all the glory. I'm telling you what, nobody likes a guy like that. I'm telling you, Wayne. No congratulations. It's always fun to catch bees in swarm traps. All right. Scrolling down, trying to get to the questions. Hey, Cayman, how can there be laying worker eggs and queen eggs in different cells? I don't see the queen, but I do see her eggs. Just a little confused. Well, Sometimes queens will lay multiple eggs in a cell, especially if there's not a lot of bees. If she's wanting to lay like 1,000 eggs a day, but there's like a small cluster in there, she'll just and keep going back and around and around and around, and just she just got to do something with those eggs. It could be though that it's just laying workers. And why do you think that there's actually queen eggs in there versus worker eggs and not just all worker eggs? Is it because they're in the bottom of the cell? Because lane workers can get their eggs sometimes all the way to the bottom of the cell. Sounds like you probably have a lane worker situation. Lane workers aren't going to tolerate a poor queen. It's interesting. Let me know what you find out, Bolash. Milltown Woodsman, do you treat just to treat? I treat, um, not just to treat, but I treat for a reason. I treat to kill mites that I know that are going to be in there, but I also do checks as well. I do some treatments that are just to treat. Like in December, I treat every hive whether they need it or not. And I think it's great. And I'm going to be doing that even more with the oxalic acid in December this coming year. And then, oh goodness. And by the way, that reminds me, just real quick, I'll segue and get back to it. Lorabi Vaporizer. Right now, they've got it in that last video I did on their latest model. They've got 5% off on their vaporizers through the link that I had on that video. So if you need one of their vaporizers or are thinking of getting one, you can get 5% off on your order on that. So I don't know how long that'll last, but they said they're going to keep it up for a while. So um, as far as treating in summer, when we come out of the honey flow, most of my hives need treated. Um, it's quicker for me just to treat than go through and do alcohol washes on everything. But then when it comes to August, we do alcohol washes throughout the entire bee operation. And it's amazing what you learn doing those alcohol washes. They're not fun, but you find that you'll have some colonies that don't need any treatment in August, and you'll find some that are washing like 10 mites or 6 mites or 7. That's the problem. If you have 40 colonies to a yard and you have 3 or 4 colonies that are high on mites, even if it's just 1 or 2, if we let them go throughout the rest of the season and crash in October, they can reinfest the rest of our bees and consequently cause them not to overwinter well or cause them to crash. So, yes, we're very hard nosed about treating for mites. However, the more dialed in I've got on my mites and my nutrition, the better my operation has done. I have some. Oh, it just jumped on me. Sorry. So, tulip poplar comes after locust. Yes, I'm typically, but sometimes they'll cross over if the weather's a little funny. But it's not much of a crossover. Hmm. Sorry, I had a question and it just jumped a mile down, and I don't know where in the world it went to. Wow, you guys must be asking a lot of questions. Oh wow, I'm way behind, guys. Okay, just getting to. I have some mouse wrecked frames with honey on them, and the bees aren't interested in robbing it back. Would it be a bad idea just to throw them in a swarm trap? If they have resources in them, the wax moss may build in that and rip all that to shred. Um, but I mean, if you got no other use for it, it's not. I mean, it could be okay. Um, probably the reason they're not robbing it back, Thomas, is because if you're in a spring flow, bees majorly prefer nectar over honey. Honey is a last resort for long-term storage. So they really want nectar. So if there's a nectar flow going on, they're not going to look at that old honey in those combs. The only time they'll rob that out is if there's a dearth and there's nothing else for them to go after. So maybe it's just a matter of waiting around a little while with them and then feeding it back out. I don't know where you're at, Thomas, but that's kind of what I think. Yeah, Thomas, Ian has had it so rough. He had a rough last year, and it has just been crazy. Hey, Brian. Yeah, the wax. Yeah, that the wax system is awesome. I did so little work to the cappings. I mean, it still involved work to get that wax out, but compared to what I've done in the past, getting that 110 pounds of wax was so easy, and it's so well rendered. And at the end of it, which you guys will see in the video, I was able to recapture a ton of wax out of the slum gum. It was great. Did you hear about the beehive thieves in Rutherford County, Tennessee? Is that common? There are people that steal beehives. Oh yeah. I don't know how common that is. I think it's more common in higher population areas and definitely in areas that have more beekeepers. Almost always your hives are being stole by other beekeepers because most people are too terrified or don't know what to do, and they'll get peppered by stings. But bees are worth money, and some people are bums and totally willing to let somebody else do a lot of work and steal their stuff. But we here in Jackson County, a lot of people get shot. Not really. Well, not as much anymore, anyways. Not over bees. Yep, Charlie Brown. I guess that's my nickname for today is Charlie Brown. I love Peanuts. It's one of my favorite shows. Charles Schultz. I also my grandpa had a lot of the comic books and the actual books, and I'd read all those. Yeah, the horizontal hive right now. I looked into it. I've got about 4 or 5 deeps worth of honey so far. It's not all capped, but it will be soon. The horizontal hive is doing well. The primary reason I do that, and I've had several people get on to me like, why are you doing so many videos on the horizontal hive? That's not what you do for your operation, Kamon. One, it's easy because it's here at my house. It makes it super easy to film that video and teach some lessons through it. But the main lesson I like people to realize is, there's multiple ways to keep bees, and it's more about the health of the hive than it is about the style of the equipment. With the type of the equipment, you have to change some management practices. But ultimately, the horizontal hive is more similar to the Langstroth than it is not. There's just a few subtle differences. It's really not that different. It wasn't hard for me to adjust. Bees, because bees are still bees. All right, questions. Tom Van Wert, the locust flow is almost done here in Middle Tennessee. What are the remaining flows of the season? So hopefully we'll have a lot more clover. We've got the clover starting, and if we get some good rains and good weather, we can have clover going for quite a bit of time and contributing. Of course, blackberry blossom is blooming, and wild blackberries produce, in my opinion, it's my favorite nectar. I love blackberry blossom honey. I love blackberries as well. My mom makes a blackberry crisp that I would, if I it was my final meal, that's going to be part of it right there. Um, and it's such a light, fruity, um, delicate nectar. Love it. So we have blackberry blossom here. And we also have privet. It's an invasive, but it does produce a good bit of honey. We have basswood. We have some sweet clover in part of the state. We have a couple types of sumac here that still produce. Right now, we still have the Polonia trees that are producing to a degree, and they're also called empress trees, which is what I like to call them. They're very beautiful, long purple flowers. The wood's quite nice to work with too, if you can get a good piece of it. Oh goodness, there's a lot of other things, a lot of small contributors here and there. I'm missing a couple of them. I got brain fog tonight, but that's a few more of the things to look forward to. Basswood can be really a big contributor as well. Ah, I'll think of something later. Hmm. Straw hive. Okay. That would be neat to see. I one of my favorite video series, maybe you all have seen it, is the Skep series, the Heathland beekeeping or whatever it is. And they had that family that was doing all the Skepland type or whatever beekeeping, and it was fascinating. I'm not ready to switch my operation to skeps, and technically in Tennessee, it is illegal to do that because you have to have a hive with removable frames in some states, and Tennessee is one of them. For inspection in case of American foul brood outbreak or something like that. But I found it super fascinating to see their operation, and they made it work for them. They really depended upon swarms, but you know I love beekeeping. I absolutely love it. Ultimately, bee husbandry is what the whole thing we're trying to teach is bee husbandry. If you want to go into AZ hives or horizontal or any of these other subcategories of beekeeping, you totally do it. I'd love to see more unique stuff like that. I don't have time for it myself, but I love to see it. And but it's bee husbandry that we lack the most in this country of ours. And if we can encourage that and educate that, more beekeepers will be successful and be able to produce honey and keep their bees alive. And who doesn't want more of that? What do you think about using better comb with a new nuke to increase brood production? You could. I've never used better comb before. My buddies that have, Frederick Dunn and Dan Ski, Dan Ski's bees, they both say you got to wire it. It is a little cost prohibitive for me, but as long as they take to it quick and go at it, even if they're just putting food in it, that's still something to help them keep some food away from the queen, her laying area. But it could work. It'll help them build up faster. I mean, I've heard good results from it. I never tried it though. I'm hoping that Better Bee says they're going to be coming to the conference with a truck this year, and they really enjoy their experience with us last year. So my goal is to be able to get Better Bee to come down with a lot of stuff like that. Their unique stuff, better comb, that kind of thing. That'd be neat. Cayman, do you use Apame hives with your bees, and do you prefer them to your regular Langstroth boxes? Ooh, I get this question a lot. They are another thing that are pretty costly, but the bees do well in them. I like insulation. It's expensive again, but it does work really good. I love the pollen traps on my Apame hives. I have 26 Apame hives, and the bees do really good in them. You can tell that they don't beard near as much on the hot days, and I feel like on those critical cold periods when they're trying to raise brood in early spring, that it helps them out. So the Apame hives, I think, do pretty good. I've got some videos on them, and you can kind of check some of those out. I've got them in the playlist. I don't have a lot of videos on them, but they work good. Bees do great in them. I've never seen any issues. The Apame hives, as far as insulated hive goes, I like them better because they're tougher. They're foam on the inside with a hard food grade plastic on the outside. And one of the things that they're finding is some of these knockoff Chinese companies are not using food grade plastic, and that's an issue. I don't really like plastic in the first place to a big extent, but if I'm going to use it, it better be food grade. Hmm. Can't read a couple of these. Would you care if we set up traps on Smoky Branch? I know the owners of the land across the road. Oh, okay. Let's see. Yeah, just whatever. If I shoot some swarms out, whoever gets them. Smoky Branch, yeah. The guy's been Cal's been getting in and kicking my hives over and stuff like that. By the way, folks, don't be putting your bees in areas where cows can get in. We had a two-strand electric fence in between, put extra strands, and his cows just kept getting in. And I learned a hard lesson, kicked over a bunch of my hives and stuff. I'll be getting rid of that yard very soon. Actually, I'll be working on that probably this week. Texas A&M Turner Seed is a distributor. Okay, you're not talking to me. Okay. Some of these comments aren't for me, so I get a little confused. I've been wondering about how rain and frost affects pollen regarding feeding pollen substitute. I feel like if I understood that better, I'd understand when I need to supplement. Rain and frost. Well, of course, if it rains a bunch, then the bees aren't able to get outside of the hive. And of course, frost can kill flowers and stuff like that. Some plants are very resistant towards light frosts. Maple trees being one of those things. Some plants with the frost are completely toast. So it really depends on what it is. As far as regarding feeding pollen substitute, you got to get into your hives a lot of times. Are you seeing frames of bee bread? Are you seeing a decent bit of stores, or are you just seeing a little bit extra in there? It takes about a frame of bee bread or equivalent of pollen to create a frame of brood. So as they're building up in early spring, that's when it's most critical if you're going to use pollen sub to feed. You want to make sure that there's not like a cold spell where it's going to be cold for a week and rain or something. Your bees aren't able to get out for a week or more. Get some really bad weather, and your bees are already brooding up. But this is going to, because whenever the bees aren't bringing in resources, they slow down on brood rearing. And if they have reserves, they'll slow down, but it won't be to an extreme amount. But if they have very little, then they'll cut back to a very aggressive amount. So you feed pollen patties to really just stretch in between those gaps of the real stuff. In an ideal spring, a pollen substitute would not even be needed. Thanks, Cayman. How close to neighbors would you feel comfortable keeping bees? The further away you can get, the better. Um, I have. It depends on your neighbors. I've got three neighbors fairly close to me. One's a nut. One never comes out of their house, so I guess that means they're a good neighbor. And the other one I talk to all the time, and he's helped me do welding on projects, and I've helped him um, cut up firewood and all kinds of different things. He's a great neighbor. Helped each other out a lot. And he's from Ohio, and who would have thought? Those Yankees. Just kidding. I remember when he knocked on my door. He's like, "Hey, what do you think about me moving over there?" I'm thinking, "Oh, great." But he's turned out to be an awesome neighbor. Um, so it just really depends on who they are. It's always I give my neighbors honey. So I try to initiate first contact and also make it a positive one. So I usually give them like a pound jar of honey. Hey neighbor, how's it going? And you just see what you get. You just do the best you can, but the further away, the better. Um, I don't know. I want to definitely wouldn't want it within 30 feet of their house or anything like that. Hey, watch the Ohio jokes. Sorry. I was actually on the phone with the guy from Ohio earlier today asking me to speak at one of their clubs up in Akron or something like that. Hey Harry, the microscope's fine. Laurel's working on the microscope. It's all good. It works just great. She's got a camera mount to go onto the microscope so we can actually take pictures and share those in videos and stuff like that. It's all good. Thankfully, it is for now. Can you feed a pollen patty to a new package? You definitely can. One thing about feeding pollen patties, if you're in an area with small hive beetles, you don't want to feed too much. If you're in an area with no small hive beetles, well, you're a lucky dog. I'm very jealous. So if we have a package and we're looking at the weather and we're like, oh man, these bees are going to be in the hive and it's going to be raining for the next 5 days, week. And it's just going to be dreary weather for a while. Give them a quarter pound, maybe half a pound. Depend if you have no small hive beetles, maybe throw on the whole darn thing, the whole pound. Usually for a package, though, I would probably feed if I was small hive beetles a third of a pound, maybe half a pound the most. And that would work pretty good. Pollen sub is again something that it's a tool, and it's an expensive one, especially if you're not buying in bulk. Pollen patties can be for some of you guys, like if you get global patties or some of the nicer ones, you end up spending $3, $4 a pound. And for Man Lake, even their Ultra Bee, if you get those in small quantities, I think they're around $3 a pound, which is a lot. So that's a big investment. It's worth it when the bees need it, though. Don't get me wrong. If the bees need that, that supplement can really make a difference used correctly. And it really depends on the area. Some people live in areas that need very, very little supplemental feeding. I view it as a tool to help my operation out. One thing I will say at our conference this year, we're going to have crazy good deals on pollen patties. I think that we'll be able to keep it around a buck 80, buck 75. I don't know for sure. We'll have to see what the market does on inflation between now and then, but it should be a heck of a lot cheaper than what you can get as a hobby beekeeper. So that's one thing we're trying to do a lot of things this year with the conference, more deals, more opportunities for hobby beekeepers to be able to take advantage of commercial pricing or at least bulk pricing. And it'll be a lot of fun. And we want better pollen subs too. I really think after trying the global patties out that I tried this year versus the Ultra Bee, um, now the Ultra Bee said they just changed the formulation again on the pollen patties, but I was my bees ate the global patties a lot faster than the Ultra Bee patties. All right, Sean Kamansky says, "Can you get liquid beeswax so you can heat it up to um, liquid temperature? But if your beeswax is not a solid at 140 degrees or below, i- if it's not real beeswax, it'll be a liquid. I'm saying this all wrong. Goodness, tripping all over myself. I need to eat something. It should be a solid if it's cool. It should not stay in a liquid state unless it is hot. I think the melting point of beeswax is in the 140-degree area Fahrenheit. So there are these products, and I want to say this real quick. I have been getting so many messages from some of you guys, and I know that you guys are trying to help me out here, and it's fine. I do appreciate it. But I have been spammed so many times by these Chinese companies who are selling these fake products, and they'll take a clip of my video and they'll take one from Jason Chrisman, and it'll be these liquid beeswax products. You can just roll it on. Reynolds uses it. See him using it here, and all this stuff. You'll never see me endorsing a Chinese company like that with a website of the name of Lovely Scarlet. That does not sound like a beekeeping website. There's so many Chinese companies putting ads on Facebook and Amazon. Be really skeptical. Really skeptical. Um, but no, it should be a solid unless it's heated to over 140 degrees. Use the Dawn dish liquid for mite wash, JB Goodman, or the alcohol. Both of them will work really good. Yeah, the global patties were good. Yeah, the conference will be at the same place. It'll be in Sevierville, Tennessee. We're actually working right now with trying to get some better deals. I got some good news on the coffee coming. I don't have it all in the works yet. I'm getting the bios and the pictures from all the speakers for this coming year, and we're going to have those up on the website soon with also a lot of opportunities. The plan is this year to have a 4-week period where we'll have early signups and there'll be a discount for the early signups versus people that wait. So I'll be announcing all that very soon. Actually, been hearing that peppermint oil in the pollen patty keeps the hive beetles to a minimum. I've heard a lot of people say something about that. I have not tried it. Have you ever put pollen mixed with sugar water? So I did try it. The Mega Bee product is ground extra fine, and some people do mix it up into a sugar syrup solution. You have to get the ratio just right, and just using any old pollen sub won't necessarily work. I don't like feeding it like a liquid. But I think that is a possibility. Um, Definitely some issues with feeding. Well, every time I've done it, if you don't get it just right, the sub falls out of suspension, the syrup, and clogs up the holes in the bottom of the thing. What does a state certified inspection look like? Well, it depends on which state that you're in. Here, it doesn't mean much. But basically, the guy comes out and tells you, "Yep, your bees are like okay. Here's a sticker that's state approved. That means your bees are healthy to sell." Smacks it on. As long as you don't have any major problems with your bees, you're good to go. It's There's really not much to it, and it's very difficult to actually get them to come out. Last year, I tried to get the state to come out and inspect my bees so I could sell my nukes. I contacted them 3 different times over a 4 month period. Nobody ever got back with me or got out to inspect my bees, and I sold a lot of illegal nukes last year. They were some good looking bees too. They whined about it later, but I said, "Hey, here's the emails. I try to do it legal. It's a pain, and I get it. There's not enough personnel, but basically they come out and look and make sure you don't have a bunch of diseases and you're not spreading that throughout the state." Yeah, what your neighbors can't see can't hurt them. That helps a lot. A lot of the bad issues people have with bees is knowing that they're there in the first place. That is part of the problem. Some people are they freak out too easily. But, some beekeepers freak out too easily too. We're raised that way these days. Get on social media and freak out about everything. The sky is falling, and bad things do happen. I realize it, but balance. And I see, for example, this is one that gets me a little bit. Um, Somebody sprays herbicide on the fence row, and everyone freaks out. 2 months later, their bees die, and they blame that, oh my goodness, my neighbor killed my bees 2 months ago spraying an herbicide on the fence row, killing vines and poison ivy and stuff like that. My best honey production yard every year has herbicide sprayed on it. The farmer uses it. I tell him, please keep it X amount of distance away from the hives. He does. The first year he got it real close to the hives. I didn't even notice any damage to the bees. Um, and I think, does it cause a little bit of issues? Possibly. I think the main issue herbicide causes is just it eliminates forage for bees. It kills the stuff really fast. So I don't think unless the bees are actively working it right then, it's not impacting the colony afterwards much because the plants die so quickly. It's not like the bees are going and trying to eat off of dead plants. Bees pick up on a plant frequency. And when a plant's dead, the frequency isn't so good. So, the herbicide thing is what gets me. You see that on Facebook and someone will say, someone sprayed this and it killed my bees. That's one thing I think beekeepers freak out a little bit too much more. Bees do get sprayed from time to time, but it happens a lot less than what some people think that it does. And playing the blame game is just a spiral downhill, and I don't like doing it. What's your opinion about using a? I don't know how to pronounce it. Apidia. It's a two-frame box for queen mating. It's kind of like the mini nukes we have here. I know what you're talking about. I think they're more common in Europe. They can work if they're anything like our mating nukes here, our mating nukes. I have some. It's like a race car, and if you have the car tuned great, you're gonna win some races. You're gonna make it to the finish line. If it's not dialed in just right, the car may explode on you. I mean, the mini nukes, they're either just right or they're all wrong. And I know guys who run them. If I was wanting to learn more about them, the University of Guelph has videos. A video on mini mating nukes, I think, is one of the better ones on YouTube. And also Jose with the California Beekeeper has some videos on mini mating nukes, but I personally don't like them. You have to have them. I've used them successfully, but you have to dial them in. I don't like how tedious they are and all the steps you have to do to get things just right. But that's just my personal opinion. If you do it right, you can use low resources and get queens mated. But I prefer using just good old fashioned deeps combs for it. Like that. All right. So Brian Reese says honey jars question mark. So this is for the conference. My goal is to have, and they've shown interest, Blue Sky Bee Supply and other companies as well open it up to sell jars. And I've got a supplier as well who sells bulk jars at a really good price. I'm hoping that he will commit to coming. I think what's really going to have to sell it to these companies to actually engage and have good price jars and lids at the conference is pre-orders, because this is not common to go to a bee conference and to be able to buy cases and cases of jars. What we do with our conference is not very common actually at all, which is I think part of the reason it's working. But we want they have to make money. Ultimately, at the end of the day, they got to be able to justify all the time and effort for it, and so they need to make money. So that means we need to do a lot of pre-orders. So I'm going to do my very best to get us at least one or two suppliers of glass and plastic jars and lids at a good price, and ultimately for it to work and to work long term and to see it thrive, people have got to decide that they want to come to the conference and pick up jars. So hopefully that will become a reality, and I will do my very best to make that happen. Do you use formic acid in spring? My thoughts are if it takes out the queen, I have time to get a new queen. Yes, Steve Chubb, I'm here in the South. I think spring is really the best option for formic. I can't remember exactly which states that you're in. Um, I could be wrong, but I think you're in a warmer area as well. So for me here in Tennessee, by the time it's cool enough to use it in fall, my mites are already too high if I haven't used anything else. So if I'm going to use it, I want to use it in April when it's cool, or even in March if I want to do a cleanup or something like that. But April would be a good month. Get some cool temperatures, knock those mites back down real low before the honey flow sets in. And if it does cause a super seizure of a queen, then yes, you can get a queen in. And maybe what you do is, let's say you treat 10 hives and you're already wanting to make some splits anyways. Purchase if you want to make 3 splits, maybe purchase 5 queens. And if you end up with all of your queens doing great, sell 2 of those queens to your buddy or make a couple extra splits. It's a good time of the year for all those things. It's all about percentages and numbers and contingency plans that time of the year. But if you lose a queen to formic and you're doing everything right with it and the right temperatures, typically that queen's kind of on the way out, anyways. Good young queens typically weather formic just fine as long as it's not used in really hot conditions. But I think formic in the South should be used in early spring, unless you can get some cooler weather in summer. Where's the video of me surfing in Hawaii? I don't have a video of me surfing in Hawaii that I know of. I was doing some body surfing. The waves were so strong, I was actually able to do some body surfing, which was quite awesome. Next year, if I'm able to go, I was wanting to go this year, but it didn't work out. Um, I'd like to take a board. That would be nice. There's some good waves. Some of the waves are a little too good on the Big Island, and they're like 30 feet tall. I am not riding any of those waves. Sorry, folks. Laurel won't let me. When are you going to post a list of vendors for the conference? Well, that will be as soon as I possibly can. It's really tricky right now because I'm trying to super colonies and make splits and swarming and queen rearing and all that stuff and do the conference too. So it's a little bit of a tight rope walk. Um, However, I'm hoping to have that by the end of June or early July, because we're really wanting to get on top of the vendors getting interaction to pre-orders, and also seeing that, hey, this is going to be something that's going to be worth our time. Right now, we're looking at last year we had 36 vendors. I'm looking at 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 6, 28, almost 30 more vendors, 29 that did not come last year already have contacted me or I've contacted them that are seriously interested in coming to the conference. So that's going to put us up around 60 ish. And that's not including us opening up and other people coming. My goal is 70 vendors this year, and we might do better than that. So um, I want to get that up as soon as possible so you guys can coordinate and know, hey, this company's coming. I want an extractor. I want them to bring boxes, whatever. And also, we're working to broker deals. And the nice thing, the more vendors we have, we'll have some vendors that are already chomping at the bit to get your business and get some deals to you guys. So that's going to encourage the other vendors if they want to compete to also do some deals. So we're going to try to do what we can. Looking for a 3-frame steel honey extractor. All right. If you can find a used old Kelly, that would be nice. There's some old used ones that are pretty good. Are foggers a viable method for oxalic acid varroa treatments? They actually have been shown not to be very effective by some of the universities that have tested them. That's probably due to the delivery, how hot it is. If they heat the oxalic acid too hot, it can cause some degradation and won't work quite right. It could be some other reasons as well. Um, but that according to what we know right now is not supposed to really be an effective method of mite control. You need trailer parking nearby. Well, we're gonna be getting a little bit more room for parking, I think, this year. And they may allow us to park some in the back too. The back's quite large. I will have to see. It's going to be interesting because based on projections, I think we're going to be somewhere between 12 and 1,500 people. And I really feel like the number is going to be closer to the 1,500 than the 1,200. Could be wrong, but that's based off the feedback. That's what I'm seeing. Let's see. Do nukes installed slow down production for the first few weeks? I do not see any eggs. That should not be happening, Ross. You know, there is a little bit of a stress period when nukes go from one location to the next, but that queen should still be laying eggs. There should be brood in there. Brian Reese says, I bet closer to 2,000. We can't handle 2,000. Well, mentally, we can't handle 2,000. I think we're going to cut it off at 1,500. That's what Laurel says, and what Laurel says usually goes. Cayman, what do you think about using nuke colonies for honey production? Ian uses nukes, and it really depends on the time of the year. Are we talking about overwintering nukes for honey production? Or we talk about creating nukes in the spring for honey production? A lot depends on how long your flows are. And when, or if you're buying nukes when you're getting them. Like I've had people buy my nukes in Tennessee in late April, early May, take them up to like northern Illinois or Michigan or somewhere like that, Wisconsin, and they'll make honey off of them in the first year because their season's so far behind ours. But in Tennessee, if you buy one of my nukes, it's very rare that you'll get much honey off of it. Our season, by the time you get one from me, because the queens are, raised here and everything, and we don't sell untested stuff, then the flow's almost over. So it's possible. I don't really use nukes for honey production. Now I use nukes to sometimes to plug into colonies. Like, okay, this is a great point to make, I think. So I've had a couple colonies that I've had to, like in the previous video, where we had that queen that was older. She wasn't doing a fantastic job. There were some swarm cells in there. One was capped. So we removed the queen. We cut down the cells. One of the things that I do often in situations like that, that's where spring nukes. I love spring nukes. You can get a spring nuke that's like a strong 4 or 5 frames. plug that into that honey production colony that was wanting to swarm. And when I come back in, just make sure you go through all the frames again, cut down the cells, plug that new queen in that's vigorous and fresh and got great brood. It'll actually make that colony produce more honey. And that colony's now got is queen right, and you're in good shape. So nukes, that's how I use nukes for honey production. Ian uses them a lot for that too. You get a production colony that's got a old queen not getting the job done, or they swarm. And you're like, man, this hive is queenless. Sometimes the queens don't come back. You can plug in a nuke there. Insurance colonies, insurance colonies, insurance colonies. Spring City Bee Farm. Have an old Kelly to sell. 4-frame manual. How should I transfer standard deep nukes into European style frames? Ooh, I have no idea. Very carefully. Sorry, Chris, that's very vague. I've never even seen a European style frame outside of a video, and I've never had one in the same video together. So I visually don't know the differences. You might be able to cut them out if it's wax foundation. I don't know. That would be an interesting video. I would watch that. So Donovan asks, when do you plan on opening up early registration? The goal is early June. And whenever we do open it, to have it for 4 weeks. I think right now, looking based upon inflation, I think we're only going to have to raise the price $5 for the early registration. So I thought it was going to be higher than that. So for early registration, I think we're just going to be $5 more than it was last year. But that includes Thursday night. It also includes a lot of other bonuses we haven't announced yet, and it will include more coffee. We're going to go for unlimited coffee, but it's definitely going to be a heck of a lot more than last year, coffee and tea. So you're going to get a lot of bang for that $5. Yeah, the northern flows are very interesting because the daylight's so long, and it's in some areas the flows are significantly nice. Whether it's canola or the basswood flows. Tennessee's a good place to produce honey, but we'll never compete with some of the northern states and other areas for honey production. A great year here, I can get 140, 150 pounds in a great year. Intensely strong colony. If I average 100 pounds across the board, that's a good year. If I can average 120 pounds, that's a great year. Ain't going to be no 200-pound honey flows. How do you introduce a new queen when plugging a nuke into a weak hive? So this time of the year with the honey flow going on, I'll just plug her right on in. If there's a honey flow going on, the bees are cool. I don't plug them into sickly hives ever. And I usually don't plug them into, you know, super weak hives, like really weak. But if it's a colony that's like 8 frames of bees or hopefully better, the last video I posted would be a good example of a colony that'd be perfect to plug and nuke into and get that honey production and get that colony queen right. Um, but yeah, just plug them in. You can put the queen in a cage, and that could be fine. But honestly, I like to put the queen on the middle frame, 5 frames. If they've got a bunch of bees, you're not just inserting a queen. And when queens are laying, they're accepted so much better than when they're in a cage not laying. The pheromone production's better, her behavior's better, pheromone production, all those things are just way, way higher. And it's not only that. When you plug in a nuke of bees with her, you're plugging in thousands of bees that actually have her mandibular pheromone that they spread around amongst each other and are spreading that around. So you have thousands of ambassadors for that queen and thousands of bouncers if necessary for that queen. But in the springtime with the good flow, it's really not an issue. Now I say this: be careful. Just because I do it doesn't mean you should. Um, However, I would not do this during a robbing time of the year this way. So big differences on spring flows and combining bees during robbing season. Jay Fox, Jay Cox, new beekeeper, East Tennessee. What mite treatment plans and methods should I focus on? Well, what I really like here in Tennessee is using a few different products. It's always good to have multiple methods of killing mites to resist any, well, resistance being built up between the treatment and the varroa mite, but also just in case one doesn't work quite as good, the other one will clean it up. And some people are like, man, treating is expensive, but if it works good and you have your bees alive to the next year, you have opportunities to split multiple times, and it's a lot cheaper than buying bees, let me tell you. Two things new beekeepers mess up the most is enough nutrition and good enough mite control. So I like Apiguard for the Thymol product. And if you, let's say you got a package, no reason to treat it really right now. And, or if it's a nuke, treat them. I usually would treat them in like late June, July, something like that. And then I like to do alcohol washes. I know a lot of people don't like to do it, but I do it to know where my mite loads are at and see if my treatments worked. And it really gives me a lot of peace of mind and also shows me what's going on. So check again in August. Summer is the roughest time for Tennessee beekeepers. So August, early September, mites need to be low. Nutrition needs to be good so they can start building up a big population for winter. And usually mites are the worst in August and September. And that's when beekeepers start having dwindling colonies and losing bees. So oxalic acid is a great treatment as well. It's soft, so I have some videos on that as well. But Apiguard Thymol is a good treatment. You can use formic acid, but some of these are temperature sensitive. Read the instructions, and I've got a couple of videos on treating. They talk about the treatments a little bit. Steve Chubb, hey man, thank you so much for your donation. Really appreciate you helping us keep the lights on with these live chats. And Brian and Steve, appreciate you guys so much. And there's been several other people over time that have contributed as well. And thank you guys. Okay, let's see. With all this wet, chilly weather and flow coming to Ohio in about a week or so, would you suggest queen rearing during or after the flow? And what is the benefit? Raising queens during the flow is easier and it makes the best queens. The things that make the best queens and what nature does is typically the largest amount of queens, the vast majority of queens are raised during the flow. The nutrition's high, the bee population is strong, so they can devote a lot of resources towards the queens. It takes a ton of energy just to make one queen. Royal jelly has to be secreted through the bee's forehead and each bee can only produce a little amount. So one queen represents a lot of bees, a lot of bee energy, tons of work. So raising queens, you want to do it during periods when there's a lot of nutrition. It's easier to get good queens and for the bees to make queens for you. So if I prefer raising queens in April, May, and June. It's the easiest time of year for me to make queens. The queens also get mated better during those times of the year, as opposed to July, August, and September. So Alan says you keep mentioning the cost of the Hive Life going up $5 more than last year. I'm sorry, I don't know what the price was last year. Could you tell us what the price is estimated to be? So it was $180 last year for 2 days. This year will be for 2.5 days, and that includes meals for lunch both days. And so that is, and that's, and it also included coffee and donuts both mornings and lectures all day, access to deals at the conference. And I'm not saying this to brag. It's just the darndest truth. We have the best collection of prices on bee equipment in the country, and probably most countries. So, and we're going to blow what we did out of the water last year. So, and it is pretty expensive to a degree, but really when you calculate what you get out of it, I'm pretty proud that we're able to keep it to that price. And we're also looking into and likely will have a secondary price this year. That will be for people who decide to forego the lunch both days, because that is a big portion of our expense right there, is the lunch both days. So catering is not cheap. So we're looking into having that option as something that you decide. And so you can get your tickets even cheaper than that. And when we open up registration, that will be made available. But there were a lot of people, not everybody. Some people had to fly in, so they weren't able to truck stuff back. But there were people from, 12, 13, 14 hours away driving in and hauling stuff back and saying that they saved $400 or $500 between shipping and discounts on product. And it's just going to be better this year. The companies made good money. And if the companies make good money, they're going to come back and viciously compete against each other. Money makes the world go round. And that is part of the reason why. So I was talking to a guy today who was a little frustrated about the way the beekeeping industry is. And I'm right there with him. Bee clubs, a lot of things in the industry, innovation with Man Lake, Datent, a lot of things. It just seems beekeeping is kind of laid back and lazy. And we've gotten old fashioned. We compared it to the technology that we see today, where things in the computer world and other things are changing rapidly so fast. I mean, we were talking about even video games. I don't play a lot of video games, but back when I was, in the 90s, we had very basic games. I know even before that, they were even more basic, basically like a bloop, bloop. But, anyways, nowadays, I mean, they hire orchestras for video games. They have graphic designs, and some of these video games are just gorgeous now. My brother shows me all these games that he plays, and it's just mind blowing. You know why? It's because there's so much money to be made. We're in a small niche market, and money drives innovation. Competition and money drives innovation. But now things have changed with the YouTube. The education and the information and the community has been brought back together. Guys like Bob are testing things out. We're doing our best to bring products to view. Companies are starting to make money, and not just the Man Lakes and Datents who are sitting on their, oh, I can't say sitting on their laurels. They're sitting on their posterior. Let's go with that one. And Laurel hates it when I say that. Um, and so but now there's companies that are able to get the word out, and it's like this wax melting tank. This guy is making a super high quality wax melting tank, and he has an opportunity to get the word out to thousands of people through our YouTube channel. I'm getting a great wax melting tank that's better than anything I could buy from Man Lake or Dayton. And now the word can get out, and he can make some money and keep his business going and start innovating. We've got to get young people, or, just people who are passionate and innovative, to make money, or they'll stop making new stuff for us. So, so we definitely got to do that. All right. 5 minutes, 5 minutes. So first year beekeeping, 3 hives, just concentrate on mites and drying out foundation for next year. Yeah, I don't know where you're at, Jeff, but yeah, focus on the essentials: great queens, dead mites, and good nutrition. Get into your hives consistently. Doesn't have to be long inspections, and just keep on them with the drawing the foundation out. Once they've drawn about 7 frames out in that deep box, pull a frame of larvae up into the second deep box and get them started drawing that second deep box. Don't keep them in expansion mode. Don't let them get plugged, and because they'll swarm. Um, appreciate that. Um, appreciate that, Brian. We really try to make it valuable. So, L. Anderson, are you marketing any Hive Life swag? I really don't have much time to do that throughout the year. So, the Hive Life swag is going to just be at the conference. This year, we're going to have a lot more. We're going to have multiple types of shirts, more Tennessee handcrafted mugs, Arctics. I'm going to have stickers. Going to try to have a couple odds and ends. We try like the mugs are made in the USA, the shirts are made by a guy here locally. Try to keep things high quality and good, but I'm gonna have quite a few things. And there's a lot of deals. Like I'm gonna try to get like Jester's nuke boxes to work with us, so they'll ship out a couple pallets to us. And where I can get a pallet for a really cheap price, you can't get one or two like that. But if we can do like bulk buys at the conference, I'm looking into trying to have several things like that for you all, so you can get affordable Jester nuke boxes and pollen sub and this and that. So we really want to make it a beneficial experience in every way that we can. It's beekeeping is not cheap, and I remember what it was like when I couldn't buy in bulk, and I didn't have friends to help me buy it even more bulk. And the community is powerful, so we're going to try to use that community to leverage stuff for you guys. And hey, I'm not going to lie. Uh, I'm going to benefit from it too because I buy Jester Nuke boxes, and if I can get more people to buy with me, we all save. So we're all in this together. Let's see. Hey, Doc Hippo, thanks for finding our channel. Any resources for people thinking about getting into urban, semi rural beekeeping? All right. So, great question. One of our speakers this year is Steve Rapaski. He keeps bees in, oh, I think it's Pittsburgh. We specifically got him because he's really good with swarming and urban beekeeping, and so he'll be at the conference. But he also has some stuff online, I believe. So it's just Steve Rapaski. Um, he seems like a pretty nice guy. I've been able to talk to him on the phone and chat with him a little bit. Hey, Russell Koopman. So on the wax melter, my goal is to have that video up on Sunday, and it's going to be a doozy. I love it. It's an awesome machine. It's built to render wax. A lot of these tanks that you see on these companies that are bee companies, they're not made. There's technology out there that they're not utilizing that this tank utilizes to recapture more wax and do the job much faster. Yeah, keister will work, Chris. I like keister. That's a good one. Cayman, could you get an AI queen breeder to set up to sell breeder queens? There are guys that I know. There's a guy here in Tennessee who buys a breeder queens every year and then sells F1 daughters and gets a good price for those Varroa VSH queens. I've never really looked into that too much, but you totally could do it. Yeah, Vanderpool Farms. Thank you. The conference is continued education. Um, yeah, I mean, our industry basically doesn't need to be treated any different. We've got, and I don't have all the information, so I literally get super excited to go to this conference and get to sit down and talk to not just guys like Ian and Bob. I actually got their cell phone numbers. Ian never picks up my call though. He's poor guy is busy though. The flooding out there's just awful. But anyways, getting to sit down and chat with these guys, and it's not just those guys. There's a ton of you guys that I really enjoy getting to see and getting to pick your brains. And some of you guys email me things that you're doing that are really cool. So that community, so important. And I've learned more in the last few years, partially through YouTube channel, just because I'm getting to meet more people than I ever would have been able to otherwise. So the ultimate bee nerd has now been unleashed upon the world. Laurel's just messaged him, still going, huh? Sh- You're not here. We were talking about you earlier, Laurel. All good things, all good things. People are just dying to see you in the video you promised. I'll pay for that one later. Bologna sandwiches for a week. Window decals for vehicles. All right. We're thinking of having those and then having like if you have an Arctic, some people like to like put stickers on their thermos and mugs and things. Laurel says that's a really cool thing to do. I said, I've never done anything like that in my life. And she said, well, you're not cool. So I try. I thought this shirt was cool. Hmm. Still, new beekeeper, Arkansas. Still don't own any. Really want clean honey. Any thoughts on treatment free versus treated bees? Death loss of treated versus non treated. All right. I've actually got to get off here, but I'm going to answer this question and get to a couple real fast, and I've got to go because I actually told my daughter there was a time limit, and she's 10. And I told her that if I had a certain time limit after it went off, that if I didn't get off, she literally could cut the power cord, and I gave full permission to a 10-year-old. So it's going to happen. All right. So great question. I want clean honey. Some of these products are really clean. Like oxalic acid, it's already occurring in honey. There's tests within a few days. The level completely of all the testing, the wax, the honey, everything levels within just a couple of days of use go right back down to where they were in natural levels. It degrades into natural products that is it's oxalic acid. You have it in your food every day. Very natural and clean. Thymol has a gel that is bait, and they concentrate basically the herb thyme and use that. It's very clean and natural. And I don't use either one of these when I am producing honey. So we have our brood chambers just for our brood rearing. That's where all the mites are, and we control the mites around the honey flow. So the honey flow, we have special supers just for the honey. They're only used for that. So they never even experience a treatment. It's very clean and very safe, and there's no negative side effects. Some people will argue that till they're blue in the face, and they're entitled to do just that. However, um, it, treating your bees can be very clean. Now, there's as far as losses go between treating versus non-treating, there can be literally no difference if you don't treat properly. If you treat halfway, you'll probably just experience the same level of losses as people who don't treat. But if you dial it in and focus on treating properly and controlling your mites, you can do very well. And losses are to be expected into beekeeping, even if you do have a good treatment program and take care of your bees well, just like raising chickens or anything else. And bees are very short lived and very dynamic going forward, but also very dynamic going backwards. So, insurance colonies is always good. But that's just my opinion on the treatment free thing. I used to do treatment free for years. I wouldn't recommend it to my worst enemy unless they have a something that I did not have. I tried everything from the super bees that were supposed to be resistant to raising my own from my own survivors from year to year. Um, Small cell foundation. I've always been this passionate about my bees. So I tried my best, and I tried it again, tried it again, tried it again. And after about 10, $20,000, whatever it was, I decided to keep my bees alive. Hey, sorry I'm late. How many days apart and how often do you treat with oxalic acid? How many times a year do you treat for mites and when? Oh, back to the treatment stuff. Thank you, Salty Bee Lady. I think this shirt is pretty awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Like a beekeeping inmate. Um, As far as using oxalic acid, it is a very soft treatment, gentle on the bees, but also doesn't kill any mites that are under the capped brood. About 80% of the mites can be under the capped brood. So that means whenever you're treating, you only have an opportunity to kill up to 20% of them at a time if there's brood in the colony. And that's if you get 100% kill. You don't get 100% kill. We don't know exactly what you get, but my guess would be somewhere around 60 to 70%, maybe lower, maybe higher. More and more research is saying that it's softer than what we think. This doesn't mean that it's a bad tool, but it means that we need to use it appropriately. We need to use it when there's very little brood in the hive. So when I use oxalic acid the most, it's in December when we're broodless here and it's above 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and I will hit them 2 to 3 times when they're broodless, and that cleans them up really good. It's gentle on the bees, And cleaning up those mites is very, very, very good. Very important. It's God's work. All right. Now, as far as how often do we treat, we do that in December. Then I use thymol to rotate treatments. I use that in summer, and that works really good for me. The APA Guard product, and then whenever we make a split, if they're mostly broodless, we can use oxalic acid again. So there's a lot of different things. There's other products out there, but thymol and oxalic acid are my two go-tos. And I've got some exciting news on some vaporizer stuff in the future. Not at liberty to discuss at this point, but I'm getting pretty darn excited about this new product. Yeah, I actually measured some of the oxalic acid and some of the Swiss chard spinach smoothies I was eating for inflammation, which, by the way, are so delicious. You're missing out. You have not lived. They have more oxalic acid in two of those smoothies, which I would have one day, one the next day, than um, a normal dose you'd give to a colony. And I'm ingesting that directly into my body, So oxalic acid's not all bad. You just don't want to breathe it when it's being vaporized. All right. Can spouses attend the meet and greet if they're not going to the conference? Edward, I haven't considered that. For Thursday night, we might make that an option. I don't know if we will or not. I do know we had the bluegrass available to family, and that will be happening again this year on Friday night. Afterwards, there'll be a 45 to an hour long session, 45-minute to an hour long session of bluegrass, and that'll be fun. And the spouses and kids will be able to go to that. We're still talking about several things like that. Hey, Pappy's Bees, it was good to see you at the Dixon Bee Club the other week too. That was a fun meeting. A lot of good people there. A lot of beekeepers interested. All right, guys. My daughter is poking her head in the door and saying the cord is fixing to be pulled on this project. So she takes after her mother. She ain't joking. Guys, gals, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Good luck with your bees, and God bless. If you have any questions, we'll see you. And watch out for that wax video. That is going to be cool, and I think is going to be the best wax melting system for small professionals to hobby beekeepers in the United States going forward. See you later.